Greetings with the oral history program again. I'm Ray Mofield, and today we're delighted to have a guest by the name of Ray Freeman. He certainly got a good given name. I'd have to agree with that.
There is no question about that.
Well, Mr. Freeman, we're delighted that you came by, and I want to take the time to thank Bobby Faust, who's been a wonderful editor of our newspaper here for some years, and a friend of mine for a long time. And I believe she was a Freeman before she married, so she must be a relative of yours.
That's right. She has moved down to the third cousin stage.
Third cousin. Well, I remember an old country song. I'm not sure I can tell who sang it now. It might have been a little Jimmy Dickens, but the thing went, we're going to have a family reunion, and even if you're a 19th cousin, you're invited too. I don't expect you to remember that, but that was a country song. It made me homesick hearing that when I was in New York City and wishing I was back in Marshall County. Mr. Freeman, were you born in Marshall County?
No, I'm a Blue Ridge Mountain hillbilly, born in Dana, North Carolina. My dad was born in Marshall County, the son of Henry Clay Freeman, one of the pioneer people in the county. The Freemans moved from North Carolina or Virginia to Marshall County in 1846, locating on the Tennessee River near Calvert City. Shortly after arrival, my grandmother, Melinda Freeman, died, and not too long thereafter, as it states it, William Freeman died, leaving my grandfather, Henry Clay Freeman, and Bobby's great-granddad, Thomas Martin Freeman. Small sons that were raised by a family by the name of Aaron and Ruth Gist in Livingston County.
Mm-hmm.
The Thomas Martin family, Thomas Martin Freeman family, have a lot of them remained in the area. The Henry Clay Freeman family, there are no descendants left in this area to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Where do you live at the present time?
Cortez, Colorado. We're down in the southwestern corner of Colorado.
You're way back corner over there, not too far from New Mexico, Nevada,
New
Arizona.
Mexico, and we're adjacent to the Colorado Ute reservation, also the Navajo Indian reservation, which extends in New Mexico, Arizona, Utah.
Now, not too many tourists, at least as far as the majority is concerned, get back in that area, do they?
Oh, yeah.
They do?
Oh, yeah.
I thought they all went to Steamboat Springs, Colorado Springs, see the Air Force
Well,
Academy in Denver, and
my sister Faye, she and her husband, John Russell, live in Craig, Colorado, 42 miles from Steamboat. My wife and I raised our family to the school years in Craig, Colorado. We lived there almost 23 years. But then we moved farther south in the state of Colorado. We're still at the same elevation, but we tell them we have better climate.
it gets a little warmer
Right.
as you go south.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's fine. And you're back here on a visit now to see the Bobby and her family and others who are. How many others that live in the area that you think of offhand?
Well, Bobby knows that better than I do. In fact, she has arranged a potluck get-together for tomorrow evening, Saturday evening, for me to meet a lot of the relations in the area.
I noticed some of the things that she has down here. Thomas Martin and Henry Clay Freeman, the people you just mentioned, came to Marshall County as pioneers. And that set up two branches of the family. In 1846, William and Melinda and their sons, Thomas Martin and Henry Clay, came down the Tennessee River by flatboat.
Right.
And that was,
Near as we know.
so that got them in the
Yeah.
Calvert City area.
They moved either from Virginia or North Carolina. We haven't absolutely established, but in a caption on James Calvin McGee, which was a half-brother, he said that he grew up mostly in the state of Virginia. And he was about 10 years older than Thomas Martin Freeman, which is the oldest Freeman son.
Well, the biggest part of our pioneers, I guess, came from Virginia. At least Kentucky was part of Virginia. And then North Carolina, of course, South Carolina. But the Carolinas really owned Tennessee. And eventually that became a state 4 years after Kentucky. We were the first. My great-great-great-grandfather, I guess it was, Ray Mofield, born that way, left Virginia 1797. Of course, he didn't come to Marshall County because there wasn't any Marshall County then. We didn't come around till 1842, but they did stay in this area of Somerset. So I have some distant relatives who write me from time to time. They see my name in the paper or something, and they live around Somerset, Pulaski County.
My dad was the youngest child of Henry Clay and Catherine Freeman.
Well, he had a famous name there. Henry Clay was a prominent politician. Harry of the West, ran for president 3 times. Should have made it, I think. He didn't. Now, as this goes on, I'll read a little bit more here. Melinda Freeman didn't live all that long. They'd stopped at an area near where the B.F. Goodrich chemical plant is located today. And all of the details of their residence there are not really known. But according to family tradition of the Freemans, Melinda Freeman died a little while after they arrived. And William also died a few months thereafter, leaving 3 boys. Henry was only 2 years old, Tom was 8, and Calvin McGee was 18. So that's essentially part of what you said a moment ago. Now, it's not known exactly what happened immediately after the elder Freemans died. However, research done by Jackie Berry, the great-granddaughter of Tom Freeman, reveals the 1850 census showing the Freeman boys in the household of the Livingston County couple, Aaron and Ruth Yiston. That's who also gave me that information. Heron's History of Kentucky says, for some years after coming to Kentucky, Calvin McGee worked as a farmhand, having in the beginning nothing save the strength of his young manhood and a persistent determination to succeed. In 1853, he married Lorinda E. Johnston, and they subsequently had 13 children. The families in pioneer days were rather large. For one thing, they needed to be. A number of children died, of course, in their first year. If they could ever get them through that first summer, now what was it they said they had? Summer complaint, I guess, was one thing my grandmother used to talk about. And of course,
in Dad's family there was 8 children in Brooklyn, of which 5 Dad was there.
This goes on to say that in 1856 he bought 50 acres near Palmer and increased that. In until he eventually owned 600 acres.
So that was Jake Elwood.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was the half of the yellow.
Well, that is almost 1 square mile.
Mhm.
And that's 640 acres, if I remember my grade school
Yeah.
arithmetic.
640 acres, square mile.
Then Thomas Martin Freeman and Mary Elizabeth Kuykendall were married on January 24th, 1860. Elizabeth Kuykendall's lineage has been traced back to Lerb and Kuykendall, who lived in Gelderland, Holland in the early 1600s. Well, I wondered where that Dutch name came from in this part of the world, but
There it is.
even in the early days, Marshall County had a few.
They came from New York down into North Carolina, Tennessee, and ended back in Texas.
Well, New York, was settled by the Dutch,
Yeah.
and it was New Amsterdam. And Henry Hudson sailed up the Hudson River, and in the Half Moon, wasn't that the name of his ship? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Oh,
first one
yeah.
over was a bricklayer in Kuykendall.
Uh-huh. Now, Mr. Kuykendall that I remember, and his wife Minnie, worked in a store here on the square. I believe they called it Crawford Ferguson in those days. And now that same building has the National Store. Billy Clark, his wife. Now, other information that I have here indicates that Tom and Elizabeth Freeman had 7 children before she died at age 39. Pneumonia, which was until the discovery of sulfa drugs in about 1926. I guess nearly everybody that got pneumonia died from it. The 1860 census shows Henry Freeman living with Tom and Elizabeth on a farm near Palma. At the outbreak of the Civil War, Henry joined Fighting Joe Wheeler. He was a noted commander of the Confederacy from Paducah. One thing I recall about that he had a steamboat named after him, the Joe Wheeler. After the war, he returned to Marshall County, and on October 4th, 1865, married Catherine Kuykendall, sister to his brother's wife. Now, they lived on a farm about 2 miles north of Palma on the Needmore Road, the same farm where Bobby Faust grew up and now owns a part of. However, the farm somehow later was bought by the Tom Freeman family. Henry Freeman was Ray Freeman's grandfather. Tom Freeman was Bobby Faust's great-grandfather. After Elizabeth died, Tom married a local school teacher, Margaret Maggie Scott. She went with the nickname of Maggie. She was a Scot, and they had 2 more children. Rounded out the family. And Tom and Elizabeth Freeman's children were Mary Elizabeth, Henrietta Lee, William A., Edna Catherine, who was nicknamed Sissy, Ruth, Mary Alice, Walter, and Clarence. And Clarence was Bobby Faust's grandfather. Tom Freeman, now look at this, was Marshall County Sheriff in 1874. So the Freemans amounted to something.
Oh, you bet. Still do.
Yeah. Well, now, I'm going to quit talking about this in a minute, and we'll come back to it later. But I want to find out what you did when you were growing up. You, presume, went to a grade school somewhere. Was it one-room country school?
Well, our family moved around, yes, starting. I went to, in the early grades, to a country school. Dad left this area, went to Bowling Green, learned telegraphy, and went to work in Florida, where he met and married my mother, Sarah Elizabeth Warren.
Named after Warren County, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
He contracted malaria. They moved to North Carolina, where Faye and I were born, trying to arrest the malaria, then we moved to Colorado where he regained health. So in the early years, we lived in Denver, we lived in Oak Creek, Colorado, we lived in Steamboat.
Now, you didn't have malaria in that climate, did you?
No, high and dry. Then into Grand Valley and finally into Grand Junction where we both lived until he retired.
Now, that was a big railroad center then, wasn't it?
Big railroad and the peach capital of the western country, Palisade area, just out of Grand Junction. Farming, irrigation. So they lived there until he retired and then they moved into Arizona. As far as school, I started school in Oak Creek, went to school in Steamboat, Grand Valley, Grand Junction, and completed at a high school just east of Grand Junction, then known as Freeman. That's where I wound up in high school. But we've lived quite a few places on the western slope of Colorado.
Now, your dad was a telegrapher, so generally he was tied in with a telegraph company, and they were associated with the railroads and so on. What did you begin to do?
I came to business college in Chillicothe, Missouri, and went into bookkeeping and business management, and followed that direction well.
Yeah, I run into a number of people from time to time who went to Chillicothe. That was a noted school at that time.
It was. In the 30s, the average attendance in the 10 months that I was there was about 2,800 students.
Say, that was an enormous school for that time.
The business college. They had their own dormitories, gymnasium programs, football team, basketball teams, and so forth. They were besides business college.
Well, at a comparable period, Murray State was anywhere from 600 to maybe 1,100 at the most prior to World War II. So that sounds very large.
Well, I visited that again in 45, late 45, after the war was over, and the war had ruined Chillicothe and had divided the buildings up into little cubby holes, and this, that, and the other. It was just dead. I wish I hadn't seen it.
I started to say, but did it look like it did before? Well, you already answered that. Progress was not so progressive to you. Okay. Sometimes we hate to see the results of time passing on, and at other times it seems maybe they did improve it a little, but in this case, no. All right, have you lived mostly in Colorado?
Yes. I took a job after we left Craig, and we lived in Monticello, Utah, which is in the same general attitude as Cortez, southern. We lived there 11 years, and I hadn't retired yet. We bought a place in Duck Creek, which is just across in Colorado, and I commuted to Monticello until I retired, and long after. Then we sold, we started a ceramic shop there, then we sold that out, and moved on into Cortez.
Were you ever caught in any of the wars that came along, or did you were the right age to miss some of those?
No, they were breathing down my neck. My brother-in-law, Johnny, he got caught in the draft, but every time they breathed down my neck, the fellow I was working for would go up and sit on the board shoulders and read them American transportation bulletins out. They couldn't take anybody out of transportation.
Yeah, there were essential wartime
Yeah.
jobs, of course. Now, you have a lovely wife over the period. Where did you meet her?
Met her in Grand Junction. We celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary in January. The celebration the kids gave us was last Labor Day weekend a year ago.
Well, did you go to school with her? Is that how you, or you just meet her walking down the street one day?
No, we met on the dance floor. We still kick pretty mean heel, both of us.
Is that square dancing?
No, ballroom dancing.
Ballroom dancing.
Yeah, we've always loved to dance. That's where we met. We still dance when we can find good music.
Did you have any, well, what kind of music do you like? Lawrence
Well,
Welk, maybe?
Lawrence Welk is right up our alley.
Good.
You bet.
That always suited me pretty well. And I thought maybe did you have any children?
We have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Oldest boy lives in Montrose. He and his wife live in Montrose. They had 3 children. Daughter lives in Barstow, California. She and her husband have 3 children. Our youngest son lives in Denver. He's his wife, and they have 2 children.
So you're granddaddy several times.
We're 8 great-grand.
Oh, the great-grandchildren have already come along.
Number 11 is already scheduled.
On the horizon. Stork is flying around. Yeah, okay.
9, 10, 11 are all scheduled.
Okay, well, that's great. Now, you've been retired about how long?
Oh, fully retired 2 years.
Have you found it to be enjoyable, your retirement, or do you wish you were packing a lunch pail every day?
Oh, we keep active. We bought this home 2 years ago and done a lot of remodeling on it.
Mm-hmm. So that gives
so we
you
keep busy.
occupied with working on your home.
We're very fond of travel trailering. We do quite a bit of that. Belong to a good SAM chapter. Hold monthly meetings, 3-day weekend camp out.
And you come back to Marshall County sometimes.
This is the first time east of the Mississippi outside of being born east of the Mississippi.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Well, we've got to roll out the red carpet for you somewhere here.
We've toured the western states, but this is our first trip east of the Mississippi.
Now, I'll let you be thinking about some interesting, perhaps unusual things that have occurred to you over the years, if you'd like to tell some of those, or anything else you'd like to. In the meantime, I'm going to pick up where we had left Tom Freeman as the sheriff. He served from 1870 to 1874, and then Henry and Catherine Freeman's children were Albert Howard, Lawrence H., Horace T., Catherine, Leon Lewis, Beatrice, and Emmett B. Now, Emmett B. Freeman was Ray Freeman's father, and Albert Howard Freeman was a physician, practiced medicine in the Bryansburg community before moving to Ocala, Florida. He was a captain in the U.S. Army in World War I. Now, that's not too far from Silver Springs, is it, Bobby? I remember going through there once. And of all the things I ever saw in Florida, I think I like Silver Springs and those glass-bottom boats better than most anything. In 1933, Leon Lewis Freeman collaborated with CEOs to write the history of Marshall County. Now, Was he in the newspaper at that time? At least the paper printed that history. I have a copy of it here somewhere that someone gave me. It's one of the fine histories of that period. In fact, if we didn't have that, I don't guess we had a real history between then and the one that was done, what, about 3-4 years ago?
Leon wasn't in the newspaper work. He was the bookkeeper, possibly assistant manager of the Urban Cobb Hotel in Paducah. But he had been a school teacher, Howard Grove, amongst other places where he grew up. And how come he wrote this history, I have no idea.
Well, he was just a scholarly individual, and he didn't want all that information to get away. And I'm certainly glad that he did.
He mentioned 1,001 names in there. I never saw it.
Oh, yeah.
History that
He
has
tells
so many names.
He tells all about Howard Grove, and I believe Elizabeth Harrell was a Howard, what she told me once about some of the things. And the great stories. I reread the book every now and then just to remind myself of some of the events that occurred in that area. Did you ever have anything that was particularly unusual happen to you that would make a good story for the program?
Well, nothing I can think of offhand.
You didn't have a ghost that inhabited some of those areas out in Colorado. You know, the movies always tell us there was a ghost up this canyon or that.
Yeah.
You didn't run into a ghost.
No, I didn't run into a ghost. Just busy life.
Where did you ever,
Fishing trips and camping, whatnot.
did they make any movies out in your area with Tom Mix or Ken Maynard or Buck Jones or?
Oh, years ago they made a Tom Mix movie up in the Glenwood Springs area. It's Buffalo Bill, Cody and his entourage, Circus and Wild West show. I remember seeing it in I think that was even before we had moved to Grand Junction in the early 20s.
That must have really been something. I get a kick out of watching movies or even seeing the Broadway play of Annie Get Your Gun, which was based partly on that, of course. And some of the great songs.
Buffalo Bill Cody shows, I remember, was a lot of Indian regalia, horses and Indian riders and other deals down the back, and their scalp beads were all feathered.
I don't know how true to life it was, but it was exciting.
Well, yes. If you can believe it, you asked for something true. When I went to Chillicothe in the mid-30s, and I lived there since June of 1935, there were students there from all over the United States, and especially those. My roommate was from Louisville, Kentucky. I think he was that state.
Oh, yeah.
I could feed him a line about the two gunmen and having to run for the rain barrel and this, that, and the other, dodge these shootouts and whatnot. He thought the West at that time was still as uncivilized as the movies they were seeing on the screen. And we were having to run for pipe and Indian, and when somebody had
that
getting to be shootouts now. You just want to get out of the way.
one of those,
It was unbelievable to me.
yeah, colorful newspaper man from Denver, Harry Thomas, ran a circus on the side and sold scalps to gullible Eastern tourists. I remember reading that in the history of journalism, and so I guess you can tell those tales and really wow the Easterners.
Yeah, it amazed me that they believed it.
Yeah. Well, we thank you very much. I'm afraid we're just about out of time. If you have one last story you want to get on, or
Well, nothing I know of. I'm glad to have been able to impart any information that was helpful to the Freeman family.
well, I'm glad that you did, and thank you, Bobby Faust, very much. Maybe we'll get your voice on